Let's talk for a minute about what a concept is inside of theater. So, you learned in part one of Theater One about the message of the story, the moral of the story. And so, shows, theater, it all has a message. There's every time you read a script or every time you see a show, you walk away thinking, what was the point of that story? What was it trying to say? So, a concept is the way that you show the audience the point of the story. So, when a director reads a script, they look at it and they think, what was the point of the show? What was the point of it? What was the point? And when they come up with what they believe that to be, they then have to come up with a concept for how they're going to direct the show. And there's a lot of different ways that they could do that. They might say, well, this was the message of the story. So the way I'm just going to go with a really traditional, exactly the way that it's written. Or they might say, I think this is the message of the show, and I'm going to show it in a new creative way. Let me give you some examples with Into the Woods. So, Into the Woods, I believe that there's a lot of different messages inside of Into the Woods. One of them is that there's no such thing as a happy ending. That everybody is always going to. You always get the act two, which is where all the problems happen for the characters. I think that you could also say one of the main ideas in the show is that the witch keeps saying that children won't listen, and then eventually she switches that over to children do listen. And you could have a whole concept where you're saying really the message of the show is that parents think that their kids don't listen to them, but the problem is they do. They do hear their parents, right? That makes sense, right? That you do hear your parents, and you walk away with these lifelong memories of things that parents say to us when we're younger, and we will have those with us forever, even though in the moment parents think that their kids don't listen. That could be the concept for your show. And then you could say, well, if I was a costume designer for this show, how would I show that? How would I show that children don't listen? Or how would I show children do listen? How would I show that? You could just make everybody look like a child, and that suggests that everyone really is a kid. Or you could say, I'm gonna somehow work in things that look like hearing. I'm gonna somehow create. I can think of really creative ways that wouldn't necessarily make the audience pay very much attention to the show. Sometimes a concept can be distracting to the audience, actually. But there's a lot of different ways that you can show the concept of the show. You can also say that the message of the show is that no one is alone. No one is alone. That's a huge theme that comes out over and over and over of the show. So how could you show that visually? How could you show that no one is alone? And for this assignment, what you're doing is coming up with a costume design for four of the main characters: the baker, the baker's wife, the witch, and Little Red Riding Hood. So right now, the thing that I want you to focus on the most is, what do you think the message of Into the Woods is? And then how would you show that visually as a concept? So remember, a concept, one more time, is the way that you show the audience what the message or the moral of the story is. It's the way you show it to the audience. That is what a concept is in theater.